Number 10, loose in the streets. The country of Georgia experienced one of the worst disasters in their history back in June of 2015, when a freak flash flood swept through the city of Tbilisi. Along with the waves of water, zoo animals were let loose onto the streets after escaping the local zoo. It looked like Jumanji with all the critters scattered about. There was a giant hippo wandering around, bears, lions, tigers, and more. It was as if Noah's Ark had crashed and let them all out. Many of the animals had to be tranquilized and forced back into their enclosures, many of which had flooded after the storm. 4 days later, when the zoo was still trying to round up the remaining few creatures, it took 3 full more weeks to find them all. Over 300 animals were tragically killed from either drowning or getting shot by police for posing too much of a threat, and 19 people lost their lives. One of the animals on the loose was a white tiger. The big cat made its way over to a warehouse in town. There, the tiger attacked and killed an innocent 43-year-old man while he was at work. Doctors assigned to the case remember him coming in with a major gash mark on his throat. Sadly, he didn't even make it to the hospital, dying on the way from the brutal attack. The police were forced to shoot and kill the tiger. With so much damage done to the zoo itself, the staff was forced to be creative and find new places for the animals. For example, one of the displaced crocodiles had to be put in the penguin exhibit, while the penguins were placed in smaller cages. The famous hippo that shows up in viral clips roaming the streets was put into the elephant enclosure until a suitable habitat could be rebuilt for it. The disaster took the city and zoo officials by total surprise. Over 2 months' worth of rain fell on Tbilisi in a span of just a few hours. When the staff checked on the animals, it seemed fine at first until water quickly started rising. A few workers had to jump on top of one of the animals' cages to avoid it getting swept away. In the wake of this tragedy, massive fundraising campaigns have been launched to help the surviving animals, but protests were also sparked after seeing the devastation and loss of animal life. Hopefully, zoos around the world will learn from this disaster and put safety precautions into place so this doesn't happen again. Number 9, Camel Chaos. On March 10th of this year, one day after Hump Day, a camel escaped from a zoo in Tennessee. When you think about deadly creatures, you probably aren't going to put camels on that list, but after this story, you might change your mind. Police received a call about the escaped animal on the loose and attacking people in the town near Shirley Farm Small Zoo. When they came to investigate, they were shocked to find 2 men had been killed in the chaos. One of the men was 42 years old, while the other was an elderly 67-year-old man. The camel continued its aggression, lunging at deputies that tried to get close to the bodies. In order to ensure the safety of everyone at the scene, the decision to put the camel down was made. The investigation of the zoo's camel enclosure found poor barriers to keep the animal in, as well as too little water for the creature to drink. Number 8, Python Attack. In 2013, 2 unsuspecting children fell victim to a murderous python that escaped from an exotic pet store in Campbellton, New Brunswick. While peacefully sleeping, the python came up to the kids and strangled them to death. The young boys were only 5 and 7 years old, and they were at a sleepover in an apartment above the pet store with the owner's son. The snake itself was non-venomous, but still incredibly deadly. In the wild, the African rock python can grow up to 16 feet or just under 5 meters long, and can unhinge its jaw to swallow antelopes whole. This python from the store was especially vicious. The owner, Mr. Savoy, claimed employees hardly ever handled the reptile since it was overly aggressive. After further investigation, Savoy believes the snake got out through the ventilation system in its enclosure, then fell onto the children from the roof. He was still baffled though, and in an interview, Savoy describes how surprised he was that the python was able to fit through such a small space. He also says how shocked and horrified he was to discover the children dead the next morning. Number 7, Leopard on the Loose. On April 19, 2021, 3 leopards escaped from their enclosure at the Hangzhou Safari Park after a routine cleaning. A few days later, they found the first big cat and recaptured it using a tranquilizer dart, and on May 8th, the second was found with injuries on its back leg. But the third leopard gave officials a run for their money. Over 3 weeks later, they were still trying to locate him. After warning the locals who lived near the park of the danger, they tried everything to find the cat. They used a controllable parachute to look from the sky. There were 1,700 people on the search party crew. Dog handlers were used to try and catch a scent, and almost 1,000 drones were included as well. They even released 100 chickens into the wild to try and lure it with live bait. But it actually took a few days to get this many people involved in the effort, since the Hangzhou Park first tried to cover up the incident so no one would panic. They also didn't want to disrupt tourism in the area during the May Day holiday season. For the first 3 weeks, the leopards were missing. They didn't tell anyone outside the Great Escape, leaving the lives of many locals in danger. After multiple leopard sightings, though, they were forced to release the news. Once the public heard, people were furious. 5 workers from the zoo were even arrested for trying to cover up the zoo escape. Thankfully, it doesn't seem like anyone was hurt in this incident, but it could have been much worse. The escaped leopard luckily doesn't know how to hunt on its own in the wild, so it will likely return once it gets hungry. Number 6. Hanover Zoo. In 2012, the Great Ape Escape broke out when 5 chimps got out of their pen at the Hanover Zoo in Germany. The chimps wandered around the zoo grounds amongst the thousands of visitors there that day. They got out after making what looked like a makeshift ladder out of some branches that had fallen from their enclosure's tree. Pictures that surfaced online after the incident seemed calm and the monkeys looked friendly. One photo even showed a chimp walking up to a middle-aged man and giving him a hug. But people grew scared as it started smiling and they saw the size of its teeth. Luckily, the friendly chimp walked away with just a hug and nothing else. Other photos show civilians sticking to one side of the path as an ape passed by, seeming confused and wondering if this was normal. After zoo workers were made aware of the situation, visitors were told to wait in the souvenir shop until they could be escorted out. In the panic, a young girl tripped and fell and was hurt along with an older man who overheated while waiting inside of one of the tropical buildings. But thankfully, neither were serious injuries. Police, paramedics, and staff came to the zoo to help. Officers were told to shoot any apes that got outside the perimeter. Some time passed and it seemed like the chimps had seen everything that they had wanted. They walked back to their pen by themselves as if things were just fine. All except one, the leader named Maxie. It was a bit harder to get him back, but eventually they did, and no chimps were harmed in the process. What would you do if a chimpanzee walked up to you and tried to give you a hug? Would you run in fear or hug the animal back? Tell us in the comments and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 5. Princess Bears. The Whipsnade Zoo in England had quite the messy situation on their hands when 2 royal bears escaped their enclosure in May 2021. Early in the morning, Sleeping Beauty and Snow White got out by climbing over a fence in their exhibit. After a series of strong winds, a tree had fallen, making it the perfect spot to escape. The princesses found themselves in a boar enclosure next door, and a fight broke out between the bears and the wild boar. Instead of tranquilizing the bears, which could have taken nearly 20 minutes, zoo officials were forced to put Snow White and Sleeping Beauty down, since they pose a massive threat to the boars and nearby humans. So, in the most humane way they could manage, staff shot the 2 bears. The boar from the fight survived the incident, though, with no life-threatening injuries. It was watched by animal doctors to make sure nothing else went wrong. There was one more bear who stayed behind while her buddies went on the rampage. Her name was Cinderella, and she made the smart decision to stay put. The zookeeper safely sealed her away in the den, while the tree that started the escape was taken out of the enclosure. Number 4. Lion on the Loose. The last place you'd expect to see lions in the wild would be North Carolina, but there are a few big cats there, held in captivity of course. These kings of the jungle aren't meant to be locked away behind fences though, they're supposed to be stalking in the prairie grass or in the hunt. So it's not surprising that a lion escaped its pen at the Conservators Center Wildlife Park in 2018 and went on a rampage. One of the workers there was a fresh graduate from Indiana University named Alexandra Black. She had just started her internship at the facility and was trying to build up experience for her future career. While Alexandra and a few others were cleaning the lion's pen, it got loose and attacked them. The beast latched onto the young woman's neck with its massive fangs and dragged her for a short distance. In the autopsy report, doctors noted several deep gashes on her neck and major blood loss as the main cause of death. She also had multiple lacerations on other areas of her body, a punctured skull, and a damaged spinal cord. The lion really didn't hold back on the poor girl. When authorities arrived on the scene, they tried to tranquilize the creature, but failed. They were forced to kill the lion in order to go in and get Black's body back. Number 3. Henry Dorley Zoo. In September 2021, a rhino broke loose from its pen at the Henry Dorley Zoo and Aquarium in Omaha, Nebraska. If you know anything about rhinos, then you know that they're huge and have a massively deadly horn on its snout. This particular beast weighed 5,000 pounds or just under 2,300 kilograms. His name was Jontu, and zookeepers noticed he was missing in the afternoon. They notified and instructed visitors to seek shelter and not move in case things took a turn for the worse. Thankfully, Jontu hadn't gone too far off. The teenage rhino at 13 years old was only 30 or so feet from his escape point. They found him relaxing, munching on some grass like nothing was wrong. Jontu hadn't even walked near the public, instead staying in a worker's only spot where no one had a chance of getting hurt. Using a tranquilizer, the zoo's team subdued the massive animal, but it took multiple vehicles to slowly lead the drugged-up rhino away from his grassy snack until zookeepers could catch his attention with other treats and take him back to his pen. The whole ordeal took less than an hour, no one was hurt, and Jontu got some extra treats. Number 2, Lovers Till the End. We have one last tale of star-crossed animal lovers for you, this time coming out of the Safari Zoo in Mallorca back in 2015. Two chimpanzees, ironically named Adam and Eve, broke out of their enclosure and set chaos into motion. Sadly, this story doesn't end well for the animals. As the chimps ran about, frightening zoo visitors, the police who arrived on the scene shot the female. It turns out the animals were making quite the scene. They attacked other creatures at the zoo, destroyed property like windows, and made visitors run in fear. Because of this, authorities were forced to take action, killing Eve in fear that she would attack one of the rescue team members. In this case, they weren't able to use a tranquilizer since, with Eve's size, it would have taken nearly 5 minutes to start taking any effect. In that time, who knows what she could have done? And as you may have guessed, this decision upset many animal rights activists. Sadly, Adam's tale wouldn't have any positive turns either. Days after the initial escape, the chimp was found dead. He was floating lifeless in the water of the treatment facility located near the zoo. Experts believe he drowned, but maybe he was heartbroken by the loss of Eve. Number 1, Cobra gone viral. In March of 2021, New Yorkers took a breath of relief when a poisonous cobra that escaped from the Bronx Zoo was found and taken to safety. The reptile was found not far from her enclosure, and employees were able to take her back using a special tool. This seems like a simple escape, right? Well, not exactly. It turns out that the cobra started a Twitter account while it was out of the pen. It built up quite the following too, with close to 200,000 followers. She tweeted things like, quote, "Oh, this isn't over, and tomorrow is going to be big." The cobra detailed its escape online and also made funny comments on discovering what the world had turned into while she was in captivity. One tweet read, "Donald Trump is thinking about running for president? That's just one of many examples," the slithery creature wrote. While it's fun to imagine the escaped cobra getting a hold of a phone and making these tweets itself, the user behind the account is actually a human. They remained anonymous, but told interviewers they enjoyed the attention the account was receiving. Since it's anonymous though, can we really be sure a snake isn't making these tweets? I guess we'll never know. Thanks for watching. Would you rather find a hungry tiger roaming around your neighborhood or a python slithering around your house? Tell us which one would be scarier in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time on The Bad Badger.